So glad everybody can make it to today's edition. We're going to be talking about fear. Now, today's color is orange or red, whichever one you feel closer to. Some will even do a combination of both. It would be this rusty sort of color. It has some orange and some red in it, and that would be a good mix in that. So it would be carnelian, red jasper, fire agate. Any of those stones if you're using crystals. And we want to really delve into what the fear is, because last week when we talked about focus, one of the few things that came up in that was I want to focus on something, and shortly after they were fearful of something. It was always a fear. Okay, what if it doesn't work? What if what I'm trying, what if it doesn't work? So there's a mild case of fear there. So spirits figured that we wanted to address this as a separate topic so that we could really discuss it. This is a vast topic, actually, but to be able to just touch on a few things and give you some idea of where fear is, and maybe give you some techniques and ideas of how you could curb some of the fear that's coming to you. Because we can't eliminate fear, because you need some of that fear. Some of it is absolutely human bound, where it's part of safety. We want you to be fearful of running in the traffic, right? Is it because it's not going to be probably too healthy? We want you to have some instinct and some fearful sensations if you're about to go through a very dark alleyway in between two buildings, 2 o'clock in the morning. That's a safety issue. It isn't fear just for nothing. It is self-preservation. It's survival. And we've always had this. And part of the brain itself, when we look at fear, scientists have looked at various elements of the brain, and there is no section that deals with that is fear. There's no section that fear is in there. What is in there is defense mechanisms when the fear comes up. Fear is a sensation. That's why it's not really part of our energy. It's not part of our brain, but we have tools to combat it when the fear sensation appears. When we look at a fear of snakes or a fear of bugs, we had some people when we did the bees meditation last week, and the week before was wasps and all of these. A fear of success, a fear of abandonment and rejection, and the fear goes on, but some of them are very real. Like a fear of snakes. Let's deal with that for a minute. It's all the way that there is this animal, and from a very young age, we learn, stay away from snakes. Just be careful of the snakes. It depends what you were told as a child. If you're in the city and you were always playing with snakes, or it never really was an issue, not a big deal. What happens is if you go through such an extent where you're fearful of it and you want to stay away, but the fear isn't sort of quantified in the sense that is it just the fear of snakes, or is it something else? Because most times when we stare something in the eyes, it's not the thing, it's not the fear of the snake, it's the fear of the snake. And we just want to sort of separate that, because when we lump everything together, that's where the fear comes in, and we really can't get a handle on it or grab onto something solid that we could deal with this particular emotion, this fear. When we look at, well, I'm afraid of snakes, so that means snakes are outside, and look how far it could go. Just to give you an example, snakes are outside, so I'm going to stay inside. And because of that, you're inside, you're afraid to go out to see anybody. And the fear sort of starts to grow. It can get so bad. So we have to sort of look at it in the sense that, what is it that I'm really afraid of? Because it can't just be snakes, because there are some people that are not afraid of snakes. It can't just be heights, because some people are not afraid of heights. They are the ones on the skyscrapers walking from beam to beam with no lifeline because and when you see that in a few of the movies I've seen, they're actually walking on the skyscraper beams. It's crazy. And in some of the third world countries or countries that have very little safety laws in place, they're up there, all of them, and they're walking the beams, and they're several hundreds of feet up. So it's not just the heights that is fearful. It's your perception of what the heights mean. All right. So that's what the mechanism in your brain deals with, is how do we combat this fear? It doesn't care what it is. It's just it's a low energy, basically. When it comes to fearing safety, that's a higher energy because it has something to do with you being safe, your family being safe, you're protecting something. That's a higher vibration than just fear itself, where you're just afraid. Years ago, I had a client that was fearful of using public washrooms. It's an actual fear. She could not go out. And for many decades, this person could not go very far for obvious reasons. Well, what if I need to use the restroom? I have to go home. So her limits of travel was like 15 minutes or however way that would work. Okay. But in essence, it gotten so deep that it was never quantified. It was I have to be home to do this human function. And so we had to work a little bit on that. But in the sense that when we look at snakes itself, we assess what the fear is. Once we have that, we are a little better off. So just to use the analogy of how things can really get out of hand, like a few examples I've given, all right? We go back to the snake. The snake bite itself, no one has ever died from a snake bite. Ever. No one's ever died from a snake bite. But the issue is the venom, is the stuff that's inside of you that grows. So in that analogy, if you have fear inside of you, it affects your whole body. Your heart rate is affected quite a lot. Fear usually resides in the liver. It's a very fearful thing. Anger is also in the liver, but fear is also in the kidneys. You're going to have more kidney issues. If fear is always in there, that isn't a safety issue. In other words, if you're afraid to go outside because you don't want to be seen, you're afraid that there might be bugs out there, that's not really a safety issue, and your body knows it. You can't always be in survival mode because it's such a heightened energy. Your body just sort of collapses after several hours of being in this very fearful survival mode. You can't really hold that. Somewhere along the line, you have to bring it down. And okay, what are we afraid of? What is the real fear here? The fear of public speaking is a real thing for some people. But when we look deeper, it's not the fact that they can't be in front of a group of people. That's not the fear. The fear is what comes after, is the fear of rejection. What if what I say is rejected by those that are listening? What if what I say is challenged? What if I get embarrassed? What if I stutter? What if I trip over something and I make a fool of myself in front of the embarrassment? See, that's more real than just the public speaking. The public speaking is just a cover, but the real issue is the other stuff. So when we look at it and we say, well, I'm not going to fall. I mean, I'll just watch my step. And we took a look at it one at a time, we can break it down and say, okay, then the real issue is here. The ideas that I'm giving them, if it is a new idea, a new concept, they might reject it or challenge it. So what do? Well, I could do some more research just in case it comes up, and I can give names and dates and be armed with some rebuttals and some answers. And so that calms that fear down. And then being in front of a group of people is not going to be that bigger of a deal. It's still going to be there, but it is practice, and it's always facing that fear that it is. One of the things that I see all the time is what we call mirroring. And I see this when we go to a networking event, or if you're with a group of people, when you are in a really good mood, let's say, then people sort of around you also get into a good mood. And the reason for this is what happens is that if your mind has what they call mirror neurons, and it's always paying attention to what other people are doing. So if one person is in a really good mood and they're just laughing and it's sort of contagious is what we call it. It's that contagious interaction, and it's a great thing. And the whole amount of people that is close proximity to you will also be in that, because they're mirroring your behavior. They're mirroring your energy. But it works in the other direction. How many times have you heard that if you're in a group of people and something happens, a loud noise or what sounds like a gunshot, one person gets fearful. Then all of a sudden everybody gets fearful. They don't even know what it is. And we get fearful. And when that happens, Spirit says, this is where you have to assess, is the fear yours? Or are you mirroring it because someone else is in panic? And when one person goes into panic, this is where somebody will step up. Usually it's a nurse or someone who is totally comfortable with 911 situations, like an emergency nurse or someone like that, a paramedical person. They can say, okay, hang on, guys, and they just break things down. Okay, you go get water, and they start directing. It calms everybody down because one person has it calm and collected. And that is mirrored as well. So the fear that was on the surface, you're now mirroring everybody around you. So that's both good and bad. If you're with a group that is a competent group and there is, let's say, a nurse like this, then that's a good thing, because when they take control, you feel better. But if you're with a series of people that they get afraid of their own shadow, and if there's anything happens, everyone thinks the furnace is going to blow up, or there's some catastrophe going to happen. Yeah, that doesn't always help. It takes a lot more energy then, because you're fearing that, and you're saying, wait a second. You're saying to yourself, I should just realize this is not my fear. It's just my neurons mirroring what's going on or mimicking what's going on around me. But I can just simply start to breathe heavily. I'll show you a technique that's very effective later on how we can bring that fear down a little bit, okay? One thing you got to realize is that fear does not exist when you're in a non-physical state. In other words, when a person leaves this world and they go back into a non-physical state of pure energy, you don't have the mind. There's no mind, there is no filters, nothing. It's just total awareness of everything around you. And fear cannot exist when you are totally aware. So fear only happens on this plane. And knowing that, that's why the brain is equipped with these mechanisms to help you combat and give you certain ways to look at fear the way it is from an instinctive perspective. All right. Now let's look at breaking it down a little bit and see if we can understand where and how the fear originates. Okay. If you look at your present state, like what you feel right now, does anybody feel unsafe? Like someone's about to kick in the door, or there's going to be an explosion, or some safety thing going on? Do you feel safe right now? More often than not, you do. Like right this moment, you feel okay. You don't feel fearful right now. Okay, if that's safe to say. Then let's look at the past. You can't also be fearful of the past because it's already happened. I mean, there could be something that was scary in your past or fearful of the past, but from that you'd say, oh, if I would have done this other thing wouldn't have happened. So you might have regret from the past, you might have resentment, you might have, even a smile, but there's no fear of the past. Okay? So do you see that? There's no fear of the past, and you have no fear of the present situation. And Spirit is even going a little further. Even if a bear is face to face with you right now. At the present moment, you're fine. In other words, there's no physical damage. There's nothing has happened, but it looks like something could happen, right? So fear resides in the future. Always. Fear is always in the future. So when we look at, well, what if this bear attacks me? Do you see? That's a future thing. What if this happens? What if I ask somebody for a date and they say no and I'm rejected? What if I don't get that job? What if the business that I launch, I make all kinds of mistakes and it doesn't make it? What if I don't tell this person that I have a crush on and I never say that I like them and they end up finding somebody else and they're gone? What if I don't say it? You see, it's always in the future. So the fear is based in the future. Always. Okay, so that's the one part of it. One thing I wanted to show you was I want to show you this video here for those that are listening. Okay, now those that are watching this, if you're lying down, I'm going to describe it to you. It is a man in a stream or a water system, and there's grass all the way around, and he's in the water looking for something, and there's an animal that's jumping out of him, and it's a lion. And it's sort of right now in a still motion where the guy is looking at this lion. Now, what are you feeling right now when you look at this picture? When you see the man looking at this lion that's coming out of the water? Anybody? What do you feel? Any comments on what they're feeling? If that was you, if you are feeling that this is a fearful thing, you got to realize your mind right now is looking at this situation, wondering, oh, what would I do? So you have that fear that's come in. Now, I'm just going to play this video just so you could see what is actually happening. Okay, so I'll just play this.
Her life 7 years ago. During her summer internship in Texas, this girl became friends with a 1,000-pound alligator that's almost 14 feet long and decided to have a graduation photo shoot with the beast.
Okay, now alligators, crocodiles, those are all fearful things. But this girl at a young age realized, and she still had all her fingers, by the way, they told her, it just as she saw this animal in a different way. And when the animal, as you know, will sense that you're not scared, you're not fearful. We hear this a lot when a horse or a barn animal of some kind or anything realizes you're not fearful, it changes its behavior. But if you're fearful, scared, and absolutely the animal will sense that and sometimes will attack because of it, because it realizes that you are scared. It has an advantage over you. Now, just to go a little further with some of the fears, I had this one client a few weeks ago that had a fear of not doing something that she thought should be done. Her perception was she's brought to this earth to fix everything, to make sure everybody stays in line, to make sure everybody does what they're supposed to do. So she's a fixer. So her fear was, what if something happened and she wasn't there to fix it? And there's a lot of ways that the body reacted to this, as you can imagine. But she saw people do a mess of things, in her words. She says, I see people making a complete mess of things and feel I should spend my energy to try and fix it. All right? And all Spirit said to her overall was, don't spend your precious energy because nothing is broken. Stay in this high energy and don't be pulled back by energy to try and fix anything. Again, that's a very, very delicate fear. The fear that I won't be there for my child. What if they get bullied in school or pushed around and I'm not there? You see how that fear can turn into something much bigger if it's not managed. It could be at a point where you don't think you have any trust in your child. You might actually follow the child to school and spend most of your day to make sure that your child is okay and hop the fence in their safety. But in a sense, how long? More than likely, we will not outlast our children. And not only that, even if we do, even if we are at a point where we can watch them grow up into very mature adults, we can't be there all the time to make sure that they don't get harsh comments, to make sure that they're going to be okay. We're not going to be there. The best thing you can do for the kids is to turn the whole thing around and saying, this is up to you. I'm going to give you the tools to be able to talk to people, to talk to other energies, so I don't have to always be there, because I may not always be there. I want to make you strong. If I'm there, I may actually disable you. That's the approach that Spirit wants people to take. You can't be there for everything. We can't turn off the world's harshness because we want them to be safe. We would rather make our kids strong so they can withstand the harshness of the world. You see how that's more sustainable for everybody? That you get some sleep and the child realizes, I can do it myself. Maybe I am a winner. I saw an article a little while ago, and it was titled "What Happens." And the essence of the article was, what if you were to live every day the way you are right now, every day for the rest of your life, and not make any changes, and always when a fear comes up, you always are passive, and you always sort of turn away, and you don't want to make any mistakes, and your fear of you just are very passive, and you just let your life go by. From this day forward, that you live your life the same way. And then when you go back into non-physical, when you leave this earth and you have your Creator in front of you, this is what the article says, you have God right in front of you, and then he hands you a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper was all the things that you were supposed to be in this life. All the things that you had accomplished, all the things that you experienced, all the travels that you were on. And then he says, what happened? And you look at it, and he says, well, I had fears there, and they were disguised as excuses why I didn't do things, because I was afraid of things. He says, being afraid is okay, but I'll make you a deal. I'll send you back to the exact point of where you are right now in this lifetime. So from this day forward, any fear that comes up, that you stand right in front of fear and look at for what it is. Over 9 times out of 10, and this has been documented for many decades, it's not something you make up, that over 90% of the fears that we have never happens. The fear of falling off something, the fear of whatever the fear is, over 90% never happens. So when you stare it in the face, you'll usually find nothing. In 1965, there was a very clever quote that was, and I can't remember the person's name. I remembered the quote itself, but I couldn't remember the author, so I apologize for that. But what the quote says is, if you feel fear, make it work for you. If you feel fear, make it work for you. In other words, you're using the raw energy, because fear is an energy. You're using the raw energy of fear to make something happen, to make something work. And then when you relabel that or reword that, it will usually say, go where the fear is. In other words, if you want to heal yourself, go where the fear is. If you want success, go where the fear is. If you want understanding or insight, go where the fear is. Because that's usually where you'll find the boulder or the pebble that's in the way that you can't see something. Remember, when we look at fear in a way, it's usually uncertainty of the future. So it's something you're not certain about. When we go into non-physical, we don't have that issue because we have total awareness and consciousness. We see and feel everything in that pure energy. We don't have anything hindering us. That same energy is in your body right now. But if it depends on how much it's being stifled or how much you're kinking this garden hose, so to speak, how much that you're closing yourself off would make it less effective. But as soon as we open things up, it comes out. You don't get stronger, you get more aware of things. Now, there's two reactions that you have to fear. You only have two. The first one is self-consciousness. In other words, you feel fear and you're saying, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Well, what if I don't get that job, that exam that I have to write to get this bigger job? And when I get that job, I'll get a lot more money. I'll be able to provide for my family in a much more substantial way. I won't get. Where would that, I'll end up being thrown out of my apartment or get thrown out of my house. What if the person says no? What if I'm abandoned? You know what I mean? So in other words, whenever fear has something to do with you, the self, the fear thrives very much. There's an endless amount of ways that fear can thrive. There's even stuff with I am fearing heights because I will fall. I'm feeling fearful of snakes. I mean, in Arizona, there's places where tourists can go. And if you know anything about Arizona, it's riddled with rattlesnakes. If you look at some of the stats. But however, there are places on the path that snakes don't like to go. They don't like open area. They like to be around bush and so on. So they've cleared areas way, like several feet away from these bushes. And there's a big sign that says, stay on the path. Okay, there are no snakes on the path, but don't go wandering inside the bush because it's dangerous. Okay, so you could still have this fear of snakes, but as long as you have a path, just stay on the path and you'll be safe. But what does a person do if they're so fearful, but there's snakes over there, snakes over there, snakes over there? And what does that do? That actually manifests snakes to come towards you because it's something that is so dominant in your energy, you're manifesting it. But if you say, stay on the path, stay on the path, stay on the path, so I'm safe, the snakes are not part of it's being safe. Is your biggest thing. Simon Sinek says the same thing with skiers. You know how skiers or snowboarders, they go through trees? He says in one instance that they are actually skiing at a very high rate of speed through trees. And they're going through bumps and how would they do that? I mean, they're going to hit a tree. But he says the reason they don't hit a tree is because they're looking for an opening. There's an opening, there's an opening, there's an opening, rather than saying, oh, there's a tree, there's a tree, there's a tree, you're going to hit a tree. So they're saying focus on exactly what you want. So now we know two things about fear that is prevalent that attracts fear to you that doesn't go away. Number one, we've learned that anything in the future is fearful because it's uncertain. The second thing we now have learned is that when has something to do with self, something yourself, like I am afraid of heights in the future. When you combine the two of them, that's where fear goes. That's why you get moss and you get mold inside of damp, dark places, because that's where mold grows. When you are in the self mode and you're looking at the future, that's where fear grows. So what we need to do is to relabel it and get the self out of there and get the future out of there. And that's where our second option is, to look at fear. And it's called facing your challenge with someone or something as an object. In other words, if you're not doing something for yourself, if you're doing something outside of yourself, it's a mission, you have a higher purpose for something, you're not involved, you're not part of the equation, and there's no future. There's no fear. I'll give you a great example. If you take, let's say, a mother that is facing a bear, right at that moment, she says, oh, I hope I don't get mauled by this bear because it'll impact my family. The fear would be higher. We already know that, correct? But what happens if that bear is now facing her child? What would normally happen is the mother will go in between the bear and the child and just stare it down, not looking for her own safety, because she's there to protect her young, her baby. So there's no future and there's no self. That's why she could stand the bear in the face, where before she was deathly scared of it. So get yourself out of the equation and put yourself not in the future. Have a higher mission. Do things for other people. There is no fear. Fear cannot reside if you are not there. Period. Fear will only exist in the self and or in the future. Now, I'm going to give you just a quick technique. In this meditation coming up, I was going to play the one with the lotus flower, but Spirit said, no, we're going to do the bees again, because there are still some people that have this fear of wasps or hornets in the sound that we're going to start addressing. I got a great email from one person that listened to the honeybee, and it was life-changing for her. So, and it just constantly visiting and facing that fear, and that was the result. But one technique is, when you feel fearful, when something happens and fear comes in, and this is something that will happen where you will feel it and not really sure how to react to it, because the fear is higher than anything else. And so we want to be able to, number one, calm ourselves down in a very short period of time. So what Spirit is suggesting is that you take your most dominant hand. So if you, whatever one you write with, if you're right-handed, then you take your right hand. If you're left-handed, and you take your left hand and you get your middle finger and you put it on your breastbone in the middle of your chest, and you push a little bit so you can feel it. And what that does is this signals the brain, and that part of the finger is the most powerful when it comes to energy. And it is a direct energy. It's just like plugging in to one of those operators that they had in the 1930s, where they had the plug in, and they plugged in, like in a hotel, there was like a switchboard, and you plug it in and you say to your heart, slow breathing down, slow down the breathing. You take a nice deep breath, and then you blow it out. You can try it now if you wish. Well, right now you're not fearful, you're not breathing hard, but this is one way that you can bring it down very quickly and have the fear just drain away, okay? Take a nice deep breath, and you push on that middle finger with your chest, and you just say, slow down the breathing, and exhale. You do that 4 or 5 times, and then you will feel that the fear is significantly less than it was, because you're taking your neurons in your head and you're using your physical apparatus to plug into your heart, and you're saying to your heart, slow down the breathing. It's very powerful. You should try it sometime. The next time you're afraid of something, we just had somebody that walked into a place that had a lot of bees in it. I think it was Rangina. And she was saying that I didn't even know there was, but there was thousands of bees where I was. And her reaction was whatever it was, but she was able to be there because she has heard this meditation before. And I think, and I'm sort of guessing, But the reaction would have been a lot different had she never heard the bees in that very healing state that it is. Okay? So what I want you to do, I want you to think of a time in your past, or you could make up one in your head, something that is fearful to you. If it is public speaking, if it is heights, if it is whatever it is, I want you to use this technique. If you start getting sort of very emotional about it, if you're afraid of snakes or if you're afraid of whatever it is, realize it's not the snake or it's not the bear, it's not whatever it is. It's the fear of that item. And so I want you to do is to stare it down. Oh no, I have one more story, but I don't know if we have time for it. Maybe I'll do it after. But I want you to just stare it down. All right, just in your visual. Okay, we're going to play the bees meditation, and if you don't want to focus on anything, that's okay. But the idea is just to lie there or sit there and just to take fear in what it is. Look at a fear that maybe has always bothered you, whatever it is, and break it down and look for those things that we talked about. Were you fearful because it always had you involved? Were you fearful because it was always sort of, what if that thing did bite me? Or what if that thing did attack? Is it a future thing? So when you eliminate the future, eliminate the self, how do you feel now? So let's make a few experiments just with your own emotions to see how you're handling this beautiful energy of fear, because it is a gift. It's there to protect you. And when we listen to it and break it down and look at for what it is, it will make you stronger. Let's see if it does that. Okay, take a nice deep breath, everybody, and we'll see you in about 25 minutes. Before you leave, try and make a few mental notes of how you felt, what you saw, what you sensed. And what your perspective is of fear now. When we don't address not only fear, but the act of facing whatever it is you need to face, then as a younger person, if you weren't afraid of like the heights or of snakes or whatever it is, and now you're terrified of them, it isn't that you're more terrified of those things. It's just that something hasn't been addressed and it's just coming out as you're afraid of those things. If it's heights, it might be something that you were okay with heights before, because as a child, if you look at when we were always playing that we're birds or we're flying. And as we get older, there are some things that we don't want to go to. We have set limits for ourselves. Then it is very possible that if you don't address your limits of how high you can go, let's say in your career, how high you can go in your development and all of that, that could replicate and come out as you're afraid of heights. It's not the heights that you're afraid of, it's that you're high and you don't want to be that high. You're quite happy being at 100 feet where you were geared to be at thousands of feet high. Okay? It's just it depends how it comes out. In some of the meditations like this, if you're doing this one again, because we will have the recording for this, in the next one, if you have a certain fear of what it is, you can color breathe some of that out. For instance, if you're afraid of success, is a good example. You're afraid of being, hugely successful because you're not sure what that will entail. Some people will say, well, look at Elon Musk. He's a very successful person, and we know his schedule is insane. He sleeps 5 hours a day and he works all the time. Always. He's always on, he's always doing something, and you may not want to be that committed. You want to have maybe some time to yourself. You want to have some time to your family. You want to have some time, to people. So there might be a stigma in there that, okay, I don't know if I want to devote, all my life on this. I'm committed, but I don't know if I want to be like that. So you might have that success fear that I want to get a certain level of success, but you're not sure what that would entail. So that would be red. Red is a root chakra color. It is your ability to bring in resources. And then if you're afraid of those money, successful things, you breathe in the color red. Fire engine red. You breathe out red, you breathe in red. So lots of red. If you're afraid of heights in this way, that's usually a childhood thing. So that would be orange. Something high, because kids climb trees, and sometimes they'll scare their parents how high they can climb this tree, and they're not afraid of heights. So as a child, heights are not a big deal. So orange might be the color to do that. That's another technique how you can incorporate color into your meditation, or hold a crystal that is orange, that kind of thing. If it's something like public speaking, your ability to relay information, express yourself to other people, and that could even be in dance, that could be in art, that could be expressing yourself in writing. Like if you're a writer, that's all in the throat chakra. So that's light blue, sky blue. And so that's the color that you would use to inhale and exhale. So that's one way to do that. But I think the theme here is we can't get rid of fear, and we don't want to. It's just we don't want the excess of it. Have fear of everything, all right? Because anger is the same way. We sometimes will experience anger, but it's an energy just like fear is. And so how do you take those raw materials of anger or fear, and what do you do with it? It's like a bomb. If you keep it in your hand and you hold on to it, your hand would go off. But if you put it in the air, you let it out and you'll do something with it. If it does explode, it'll have minimal effect as far as your safety and far as how it's going to impact you. You won't be frozen fearful. You'll just have this element. Yeah, I'm afraid, but I'm still going. I'm still going, but I know the risks. I'm still going, you know. And the more that we delve into the different energies and the tuning fork and the way that a lot of the meditations that is created by Spirit and I, we try and make it so that every time you hear it, another layer or another part of you that holds you back is just sort of melted off. And it's very, very subtle. It's just like coming in with, I guess I always use Jeeps or cars because I guess as being a guy, I see things more like that. A car comes into a car wash and it's full of mud. It just went through like a mud field and it's full of mud. And instead of a scouring pad, we're just putting water on it. It's very delicate because underneath all that mud is about a $5,000 paint job. So you don't want to be going with very, very abrasive stuff. It all has to be gentle. And this one kind of is like that. It's very gentle, sometimes almost undetectable. Okay, nothing really happened. I never really felt anything. But then you hear it again. I said, oh, I'm feeling something now. And it is that melting, that something's eroding. Clear water is going on the vehicle, but if you look underneath, it's all dirty water. So it's got to be doing something, right? And so it's like that. It just constantly cleansing and putting yourself into that area. But using fear and anger as raw materials is really what Spirit wanted to relay here, is use it as something that you could do something with. The term was, if you feel fear, make it work for you. What does that mean? But if you just say it over and over to you, okay, I'm feeling fearful, I'm feeling scared. How do I use this to my advantage is your question. And then just let yourself get to that, whatever equation it is. And sometimes you'll find out amazing, fearful of heights, or I wasn't fearful of other people, or I never used to be fearful of whatever it is. And so I want to find out why, what's going on. And so you go into that, and your energy hears it, and that's your intention. So each time you go in with an intention, your body gets it. Your body will realize, okay, it's something deeper, and it will go and find out those snippets of little answers that'll come. You won't get it all. It won't be laid out and give you a whole paragraph. It'll give you a paragraph, but one or two words at a time. So it's not always as clear. And halfway through it, it's what are they trying to tell me? And I still get that. What are you trying to say? Just tell me. You just say, I get it. But it's the quest of finding this information and just being patient that it will come each time. And that almost makes me more anxious to get into the next meditation, because I know I'm going to get another little piece of the puzzle, right? And another little piece. And then, and then if you just want to fast track it, then there's other ways. So I'll use tuning forks, and I'll use other crystals. There are ways to make it go faster, or being outside doing the meditation is really great beside water. If you have a backyard and there's a little creek going through, that's a perfect place. As long as the Wi-Fi works and you can hear it or whatever, it's awesome. Some people will hook up their phone and be outside, and they're just in this beautiful, so you're not cold, so in the sun or something, and they'll go through it and they'll have amazing visions because you're close to a tree, you're close to the ground, and that's really, really powerful, being in nature that way. So you just keep changing it up, and one day you'll just get, wow, this is what they're talking about. Up until then, it's just been, well, not getting much. Oh, well, that was a wash. Not getting much, but just keep at it. Somebody started your business and they said, oh, I can't sell anything. Well, we've only been doing it for 2 hours. It's going to take a little time, okay? And you sort of reassure them that in the end, once you are, guided as to how to sell this and what to say, how to do it, it'll come. But they won't get it right away. But once they can see it's coming, then it becomes more fun because then they can see, that's how you do it. It's like that with everything. It's a learning curve. We have to go back to where we always are just to get to our natural state. I know you figure natural state should be natural, and it is, because when we pass and we go back into non-physical, we're totally natural, right? And everything is so powerful. So it just takes a whole lifetime for us to stifle and crimp the garden hose and to keep ourselves contained. And there's so many filters that energy has to go through. It starts off as white, but what comes out is like a gray. It's not even the same color because it has to go through so many filters. So our job is to start eliminating those filters, not the message. Message is fine, but we're getting rid of the things that are in the way that is slowing things down. I hope this was another good technique that you saw today. So just keep yourself out of the fear and keep the future out of the fear. And then there's no fear. You keep those two out, make it a higher purpose. You give yourself something that you're working for humanity or for something else, and there's no fear. People will say, how come you can just walk in and because I'm not doing it for me. It's not about me. As soon as you put yourself in the equation, fear is right there waiting. Okay, so hopefully this was a nice insight so that you can do much more things and not have that happen. Somebody had asked me, maybe it was vibrational because I heard it anyway in my head. What if it's just something simple like I'm applying for a job? Like, how do I work that into humanity? Because it's a job for me. Okay, so we can't think of the future and we can't think of ourselves. So there you say, I want this job because it'll give my family more possibilities, and the family will be able to have more resources. We will be able to just live a little better. Maybe we could have a bigger home. Maybe we could have more comfortable surroundings. Maybe we could get a car that we could go for a drive. And so in other words, make it so that it's not about you. It's about other people. And if you're alone or if you're single or something, it would be about maybe something that you could provide more for your pets, or maybe you could provide more for the people that you like let's say you're with part of a church or you're part of another group and you want to raise money for a good cause. So again, you're trying to formulate it however way you can do it. Just keep yourself out of it and keep the future out of it. Those two are the two environments that fear loves to grow. And so don't give it a place to grow. Don't make it about you. Okay? Because you're providing something that will help other people. We'll see you next week, and have yourself a great weekend. We're going to have a really nice weekend, so I hope you enjoy the sun and get out there. And so thank you for coming. It's always a pleasure to be delivering this.
Amazing session.
It stays inside of me, and it doesn't do anything. So I'd rather share it. Have a good weekend, everybody. Love you all.
Thank you, Tony.
Amazing
Thank
session.
you.
Thank you.
Hi, Tony.
Bye
Can
now.
I
Bye,
add?
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.